1. Aperture. Definition: aperture refers to the size of the opening in the lens through which light enters the camera. Measurement: aperture is measured in f-stops, e.g., f/2.8, f/4, f/8. Effects on image: large aperture, small f-number. Allows more light, creates a shallow depth of field, blurry background. Small aperture, large f-number allows less light, increases depth of field, more in focus. 2. Shutter speed. Definition: shutter speed determines the amount of time the camera's shutter is open, exposing the camera sensor to light. Measurement: shutter speed is measured in seconds or fractions of a second, e.g., 1/1000s, ones. Effects on image: fast shutter speed, freezes motion, suitable for sports or fast-moving subjects. Slow shutter speed, captures motion blur, useful for creating a sense of movement. 3. ISO. Definition: ISO measures the sensitivity of the camera sensor to light. Scale: ISO values typically range from 100 to 3200 and beyond. Effects on image: low ISO, e.g., ISO 100 less sensitive to light, suitable for bright conditions. High ISO, e.g., ISO 1600 or higher, more sensitive to light. Useful in low light situations, but may introduce noise, grain, to the image. Adjusting settings for different lighting conditions. Bright conditions, use a smaller aperture, higher f-number. To reduce the amount of light entering the camera, use a faster shutter speed to avoid overexposure. Keep ISO low for optimal image quality. Low light conditions. Choose a larger aperture, lower f-number, to allow more light. Use a slower shutter speed to allow more time for light to reach the sensor. Increase ISO to make the sensor more sensitive to low light, but be cautious of introducing noise. Utilizing manual mode. Manual mode provides complete control over all 3 exposure settings, allowing for creative flexibility. Here's how to use it. Set aperture. Choose the desired depth of field based on creative intent. Set shutter speed, adjust to freeze or capture.
Rule of thirds. The rule of thirds is a fundamental guideline in visual arts and photography. It involves dividing an image into 9 equal parts using 2 horizontal and 2 vertical lines, creating a grid. The key elements of interest in the scene are then placed along these lines or at their intersections. By adhering to the rule of thirds, photographers and artists aim to achieve visual equilibrium and balance within their compositions. Placing main subjects or points of interest at the intersections or along the lines often creates a more dynamic and visually appealing image compared to centering everything. Leading lines. Leading lines are prominent lines within an image that guide the viewer's eyes toward a specific focal point. These lines can be actual lines in the scene, such as roads, rivers, or fences, or implied lines created by the arrangement of elements in the composition. The purpose of leading lines is to draw the viewer's attention to a particular area of the image, emphasizing depth and creating a natural flow. Skillful use of leading lines can contribute to a more engaging and immersive viewing experience. Framing and utilizing foreground elements. Framing involves using elements within the scene to create a frame around the main subject. This can be achieved through natural elements like archways, windows, or trees, or even using objects like doors or bridges. By incorporating a frame, photographers and artists add context to the main subject and draw attention to it. It creates a sense of depth and provides a visual anchor for the viewer. Additionally, utilizing foreground elements involves incorporating objects or elements in the front part of the composition. Researching locations for the best vantage points. Scouting. Before heading out, research potential locations using online resources, maps, and photography forums. Look for iconic landmarks, natural features, and unique landscapes. Scout the area in advance to identify the best vantage points and understand the potential lighting conditions. Golden hours. Consider the time of day for optimal lighting. Sunrise and sunset, known as the golden hours, often provide soft, warm light that enhances the beauty of landscapes. Plan your shoot accordingly, utilizing wide-angle lenses for expansive views. Lens choice. Wide-angle lenses, typically ranging from 14mm to 35mm, are ideal for capturing expansive landscapes. They allow you to include more of the scene in the frame, emphasizing the vastness of the environment. Depth and perspective. Wide-angle lenses also enhance the sense of depth in your images. Elements in the foreground appear larger, creating a more immersive experience for viewers. Be mindful of distortion, especially at the edges of the frame, and use it creatively to exaggerate certain features. Incorporating foreground elements to add depth. Foreground interest. To create a compelling composition, include interesting foreground elements. This could be rocks, plants, water, or any object that adds visual interest. A well-chosen foreground can lead the viewer's eye into the image and provide a sense of scale. Leading lines. Use natural lines or elements in the foreground to guide the viewer's gaze towards the main subject or the focal point of your composition. This can create a more dynamic and engaging image. Framing. Utilize foreground elements to frame the scene. This adds a sense of enclosure and draws attention to the main subject. Overhanging branches, arches, or natural formations can be effective framing elements. Composition tips. Rule of thirds. Apply the rule of thirds by placing key elements, such as the horizon or a prominent feature, along mastering poses. Communication. Establish a comfortable and open line of communication with your subject. This helps in creating a relaxed atmosphere and allows for natural expressions. Understand your subject. Before the shoot, spend some time talking to your subject to understand their personality and preferences. This will guide you in choosing poses that suit them best. Natural and candid poses encourage natural movements and expressions. Candid shots often capture genuine emotions and convey authenticity. Use props and environment. Incorporate elements from the environment or props that complement the subject and add visual interest to the composition. Experiment with angles. Try shooting from different angles to find the most flattering perspective. This can include shooting from above, below, or at eye level. Dynamic posing. Experiment with dynamic poses that add energy and movement to your portraits. This could involve walking shots, action poses, or even jumps. Conveying emotions through facial cues. Eyes. The eyes are often considered the windows to the soul. Encourage your subject to express emotions through their eyes, whether it's joy, intensity, or vulnerability. Facial expressions. Guide your subject to convey specific emotions through facial expressions. A genuine smile, a contemplative look, or a serious expression can convey a range of emotions. Experiment with light. Play with lighting to enhance facial features and emotions. Soft, diffused light can create a gentle mood, while dramatic lighting can add intensity. Storytelling. Encourage your subject to connect with the emotions they want to convey, telling a story through their expressions. This creates a narrative within the portrait. Experimenting with focal lengths. Wide angle, 35mm or below. Ideal for environmental portraits, wide-angle lenses capture more of the surroundings. They can be used for storytelling and to emphasize the relationship between the subject and their enviro. Choosing the right lens. Macro lens. Invest in a dedicated macro lens. with a 1:1 magnification ratio for true macro photography. These lenses are designed to focus at very close distances and provide sharp details. Focal length. Consider the focal length of the macro lens. A focal length between 90 mm and 105 mm is common and provides a good balance between working distance and magnification. Longer focal lengths, 150 mm and above, are ideal for subjects that may be easily disturbed. Image stabilization. Opt for a lens with image stabilization to counteract any potential camera shake when shooting at such close distances, especially in handheld situations. Controlling depth of field, aperture settings. Use a small aperture, higher f number, to increase depth of field and ensure that more of the subject is in focus. Apertures between f/8 and f/16 are commonly used in macro photography. Manual focus. Switch to manual focus to have precise control over where you want to focus. Autofocus can struggle at such close distances, and manual focusing allows for fine-tuning. Focus stacking. For subjects where depth of field is critical, consider focus stacking. This involves taking multiple shots at different focus points and combining them in post-processing to achieve a fully focused image. Finding interesting subjects in everyday objects. Explore nature. Look for insects, flowers, leaves, and other small elements in nature. Explore gardens, parks, and even your backyard for a wealth of macro subjects. Textures and patterns. Focus on the textures and patterns present in everyday objects. This could include the veins of a leaf, the details of a piece of fabric, or the surface of a textured object. Water droplets. Capture the beauty of water droplets on various surfaces. After rain or dew, you can find fascinating reflections and refractions in tiny droplets. Kitchen and household items. Explore the kitchen for subjects like fruits, vegetables, and spices. The intricate. Understanding shutter speed. Shutter speed is the amount of time the camera's shutter remains open to expose the camera sensor to light. In long exposure photography, slower shutter speeds, e.g., 1 second or longer, are used to capture motion over an extended period. 2. Creating dreamy effects with light trails. Light trails are a common and captivating subject for long exposure photography. To capture light trails, find a location with moving lights such as cars on a busy street or cityscape with moving vehicles. Set your camera on a tripod to avoid camera shake during the long exposure. Choose a slow shutter speed, e.g., 5 to 30 seconds, to allow the lights to create trails as they move through the frame. Experiment with different compositions and angles to achieve interesting results. 3. Using neutral density, ND, filters. ND filters are essential for long exposure photography, especially in bright conditions where it may be challenging to use slow shutter speeds without overexposing the image. ND filters reduce the amount of light entering the lens, allowing you to use longer shutter speeds without overexposing the image. Different ND filter strengths, e.g., ND2, ND4, ND8, etc., provide varying levels of light reduction. 4. Setting up your camera use manual or shutter priority mode on your camera to have control over the shutter speed. Set a low ISO, e.g., ISO 100 or 200, to reduce noise in the image. Use a tripod to keep the camera steady during the long exposure. 5. Planning shots with moving elements. Identify interesting moving elements in your scene, such as water, clouds, or people. Consider the direction and speed of movement to compose your shot effectively. Experiment with different shutter speeds to capture various levels of motion blur. 6. Post-processing. Use software like Adobe Lightroom or Photoshop to enhance your long exposure images. Adjust exposure, contrast, and colors as needed. Consider cropping and straightening the image for a polished look.